My brother wrecked our parents' car and blamed me. Everyone believed him, until a witness came forward and I exposed the truth. There's a certain kind of silence that comes right after something terrible happens. The kind where your brain refuses to catch up with reality, where the world slows down just enough for you to convince yourself, just for a second, that maybe you imagined the whole thing. That's exactly what I felt when I saw my parents' car wrapped around a tree. The front end was crumpled like an accordion, the hood twisted at an unnatural angle. Steam hissed from beneath the bent metal, curling into the cold night air like smoke from a dying fire. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks, and one of the headlights flickered weakly, barely clinging to life. My stomach clenched. This wasn't just a fender bender. This was bad. And the worst part? It wasn't even my fault. I had been home all night, sitting in my room, minding my own business. My parents had gone to bed early, and I was just about to call it a night myself when the front door burst open so hard it slammed against the wall. Jake came stumbling in, his face pale, his hands shaking. I sat up straight. "What the hell? Dude, I need your help," he panted, cutting me off. Jake, my older brother by 3 years, was the golden child. He had charm, good looks, and an effortless way of talking himself out of trouble. It was like a superpower. Teachers loved him, coaches worshipped him, and our parents, well, let's just say that if Jake ever did screw up, they never seemed to notice. But right now, he wasn't looking so smooth. "What's going on?" I asked, already feeling my stomach tighten. Jake swallowed hard. "It's bad." I didn't have to ask him to explain. He grabbed my arm and practically dragged me outside, the cool night air hitting me like a slap to the face. That's when I saw it. The mangled wreckage of Dad's car, barely making it into the driveway. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Oh, shit." Jake ran a shaky hand through his hair. "I know. What did you do?" I wasn't even going that fast," he stammered. He waved his hands like that would somehow explain everything. The road was slick. The turn came up too quick. I lost control. I stepped closer, inspecting the damage. The driver's side mirror was barely hanging on by a thread, and the entire front bumper was practically folded in half. This wasn't just some scrape. This was totaled. "You're dead," I muttered. "We're both dead." Jake let out a sharp breath, glancing back toward the house like someone might overhear us. "That's why I need you to take the blame." I whipped around so fast my vision blurred. "Are you insane? Just listen." "No, you listen. You want me to tell Mom and Dad that I did this?" I pointed at the wreck. "Do I look stupid to you?" Jake's jaw clenched. "If they find out it was me, I'm screwed. They'll take my car. They'll probably make me pay for the damages. I'll have to get a job. And you know what that means?" He fixed me with a desperate look. "No football. No scouts looking at me. Say goodbye to my scholarship." I clenched my fists. He always did this, always made everything about him. But I couldn't ignore the truth in his words. If Jake lost his scholarship, it wouldn't just screw him over. It would hurt all of us. My parents were already stretching their budget thin to support him. If he had to stay home next year, if he couldn't get into a good school, that meant they'd be paying for both of us to go to college eventually. And with me being the younger brother, I already knew where that would put me, right at the bottom of the priority list. Jake saw me hesitating and went in for the kill. "You can fix this, dude. Just say you took it for a spin and lost control. They'll be pissed, yeah, but not ruin your life pissed." I wanted to tell him to shove it. I wanted to march back inside, wake up our parents, and let him deal with the mess he made. But I didn't, because deep down, I knew Jake was right. And that's how I found myself standing in the living room 5 minutes later, staring at my half-asleep parents as I muttered the biggest lie of my life. I wrecked the car. The living room felt like a pressure cooker, and I was about to get burned. My parents had been asleep when I woke them up, and for a split second, I thought maybe they'd be too groggy to fully grasp what I was saying. But that hope died the moment my dad's eyes snapped wide open. "You what?" His voice was dangerously low, the kind of quiet that made my stomach sink. Jake stood just behind them, out of their direct line of fire, arms crossed, playing the part of the concerned older brother. I had to resist the urge to glare at him. I swallowed hard. I wrecked the car." The words felt heavy in my mouth like swallowing rocks. Mom's hand flew to her chest. Oh my God, are you okay? I nodded quickly, trying not to look as guilty as I felt. Yeah, I'm fine. Her shoulders sagged with relief, but Dad wasn't buying any of it. His face was turning a deep shade of red, and I could already see the vein in his forehead pulsing. The same one that only ever made an appearance when I was really in trouble. Do you have any idea what you've done? He barked. That car is total. I lowered my head. I know. Dad ran a hand down his face like he was trying to physically wipe away his frustration. What the hell were you thinking, sneaking out in the middle of the night and taking my car? My brain scrambled for an answer, but I had none, because of course I hadn't actually done it. I don't know. I forced out a sigh, trying to look ashamed. I thought I could handle it. I wasn't going that fast, but the road was slick, and I lost control. Jake was watching me closely, probably making sure I stuck to the story. I wanted to punch him in the face. Dad let out a sharp breath. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. He turned to Mom, throwing his hands in the air. This is what happens when you go too easy on him. He thinks he can just do whatever the hell he wants. Mom frowned. I don't go easy on him. Then why is this happening? He gestured toward me like I was some kind of broken appliance he wanted to return. A 16-year-old with a learner's permit taking my damn car? He could have killed himself. I said I was sorry. I mumbled. Sorry doesn't fix this. His voice was ice cold. You're grounded. Indefinitely. I expected that, but it still stung. And you're paying for the damages. That part hit way harder. My head snapped up. What? But? No buts. I don't care if you have to mow every lawn in this neighborhood. You're going to help cover this mess. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Jake owed me for this, but I couldn't exactly say that. Not yet. Dad jabbed a finger toward me. And until further notice, you're not touching a car. Do you understand? I nodded stiffly. Jake finally stepped forward, putting a hand on my shoulder like he was some wise mentor instead of the reason I was in this mess. Look, Dad, go easy on him, okay? I mean, yeah, it was dumb, but he's already beating himself up over it. I had to fight back a laugh. Oh, now you're the good guy? Dad scoffed. Oh, I'm going easy on him? Trust me, I should be calling the damn cops right now for this level of stupidity. Mom put a hand on his arm. Mark, calm down. Calm down. He ran a hand through his hair. We don't even know how much this is going to cost. Insurance is going to skyrocket because of this. The weight of the moment crashed over me. I was really doing this. I was taking the fall for something I hadn't done, and Jake was just standing there, watching me drown. Then Mom turned to him. And where were you while your brother was out driving our car in the middle of the night? Jake blinked, then put on his best concerned older brother face. I was asleep, he lied smoothly. I didn't even know he took it until I heard the crash. Lying came so easily to him. I forced myself to stay quiet. I had done what he asked. I had taken the blame. Now I had to live with it. But I had no idea just how bad things were about to get. The next morning, reality hit me like a freight train. I woke up to the sound of voices downstairs, low, tense, and all too familiar. Dad was already on the phone with the insurance company, which meant I was about to find out just how deep I had buried myself. I rubbed my face, groaning as I rolled out of bed. My whole body felt heavy, weighed down by guilt, anger, and the overwhelming urge to march into Jake's room and punch him straight in the jaw. Instead, I dragged myself downstairs. Mom was in the kitchen, stirring a cup of coffee like she was trying to hypnotize herself into calmness. Dad was pacing near the window, his phone pressed to his ear. Yes, I understand. No, he wasn't drinking. No, it doesn't even have his license yet. Each sentence made my stomach sink lower. Dad turned just enough to glare at me before refocusing on his call. No, we'll handle it privately. Yes, I understand the rate increase. Just tell me how much. He paused, listening. Then he swore under his breath. Fantastic. Great. Thanks for nothing. He ended the call with a frustrated tap and turned to face me fully. You just cost us $300 a month. I winced. Just don't. He pinched the bridge of his nose, sighing deeply. I don't want to hear excuses. I glanced at Mom for backup, but she just shook her head. I don't even know what to say, honey, which somehow made me feel worse than if she'd yelled at me. Dad crossed his arms. You're grounding? Just got extended. And you start working to pay this off. I don't care if you have to scrub toilets at a gas station. You're getting a job. I barely had time to process that before a knock sounded at the door. Mom frowned, setting down her coffee. Who could that be this early? Dad opened the door, and my heart dropped. A cop stood on our front porch. I nearly threw up on the spot. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his uniform crisp, his belt weighed down with all the usual tools: radio, handcuffs, gun. He adjusted his hat slightly before nodding at my dad. "Morning, sir. Sorry to bother you, but I'm here following up on an accident report. Your son was the one who crashed the vehicle." Dad stiffened. "Yes." The officer nodded, pulling out a small notepad. "Mind if I ask him a few questions?" Dad's eyes locked onto mine, and I suddenly felt very small. "Go ahead." The officer turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Son, can you walk me through what happened?" I swallowed hard. My brain scrambled to remember the exact details of the lie I had told last night. I just wanted to go for a drive," I said, my voice dry as sandpaper. I wasn't going that fast, but the road was slick and I lost control. The officer jotted something down, then looked up. "And you were alone?" I hesitated for just a second. Too long. His eyes narrowed slightly. "You were alone, right?" I forced myself to nod. "Yeah." The officer studied me for an uncomfortably long moment, like he was peeling back my skin and reading the truth underneath. Finally, he clicked his pen and tucked his notepad away. "Lucky you weren't hurt, but driving without a license? That's serious, kid. If your parents weren't handling this privately, we'd be looking at some real consequences here." I nodded stiffly. "I understand." "Good." He turned back to my dad. "We'll process the report, but if we need any more information, we'll be in touch." Dad thanked him, and the officer gave me one last unreadable look before heading back to his patrol car. The second the door shut, I let out a shaky breath. That had been way too close. I turned to go back upstairs, but Dad's voice stopped me cold. "You're mowing the lawn today." I clenched my jaw. "It's January." "Then rake the leaves." "I don't care. You're doing something." I didn't argue. There was no point. As I stepped outside, the freezing air bit at my skin. The lawnmower sat waiting for me like a cruel joke, and I sighed before grabbing the rake. Jake, meanwhile, was nowhere to be found. He had left for football practice hours ago, his life completely unchanged. He wasn't grounded. He wasn't outside in the cold, doing pointless chores. He had won. At least, that's what I thought, until Kevin Parker showed up. I had just finished piling up the leaves when I heard footsteps crunching up the driveway. I turned, expecting to see Mom or Dad coming to check on me. Instead, I found myself staring at Kevin, one of Jake's football teammates. He wasn't a friend. Not really. We'd had a few conversations here and there, mostly when he came over for team hangouts, but that was it. So, why was he here now? Kevin leaned against the porch railing, lowering his voice. "Look, man, I wasn't going to say anything, but after practice today, I figured I should warn you." I frowned. "Warn me about what?" Kevin exhaled, glancing around like he wanted to make sure no one was listening. "Somebody saw the crash." The rake nearly slipped from my hands. "What?" "Yeah, one of the old guys who lives near that curve. He told the cops he heard the wreck and looked outside just in time to see someone getting out of the car." My pulse hammered in my ears. Did he say who he saw?" Kevin gave me a pointed look. He said it was definitely a tall guy. My blood turned to ice. Kevin shrugged. "Now, no offense, but that doesn't really match you." Oh no. I felt my throat tighten. Are the cops gonna? They don't know it was Jake yet. But if they come asking more questions, Kevin let the sentence hang. I stared at him, my heart pounding. "Why are you telling me this?" Kevin sighed. "Because if this gets out, Jake's done. No football. No scholarship. And if coach finds out he lied to the cops." He shook his head. "Game over." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words crushing down on me. Jake hadn't just screwed me over. He had the entire football team's future riding on this lie. Kevin clapped me on the shoulder. "Just handle it, all right?" Then he walked off, leaving me standing there, stomach in knots. I had done Jake a favor. I had covered for him. But now I was starting to think I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. I stood in the front yard long after Kevin left, staring at the piles of dead leaves like they held the answer to my problems. Some old guy had seen Jake. Seen him. The cops didn't know yet, but it was only a matter of time. And if they put 2 and 2 together, game over. Not just for Jake, but for me too. I had already lied to the police once. If they found out, I wasn't just some kid covering for his brother. I was an accomplice. I ran a hand through my hair, my fingers ice cold from the winter air. I had to talk to Jake. Now. I dropped the rake and stormed inside, my heart pounding. Mom was still in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, and Dad had disappeared into his office. I took the stairs 2 at a time, barely stopping to catch my breath before I barged into Jake's room. He was lying on his bed, headphones on, scrolling through his phone like he didn't have a care in the world. That pissed me off even more. I yanked the headphones off his head. We have a problem. Jake sat up, rubbing his ear. Dude, what the hell? Kevin Parker just came by, I said through clenched teeth. Some guy near the crash saw you. He told the cops he saw someone tall get out of the car. Jake blinked. For a second, he just sat there, letting the words sink in. Then, finally, he muttered, "Shit." "Yeah," I snapped. "Shit." Jake swung his legs off the bed, rubbing his face. All right. We can fix this." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, we can fix this? I already fixed it by taking the blame. But if the cops figure out you were driving, that's it. You're screwed. No football. No scholarship. Maybe even charges for actual reckless driving." Jake let out a frustrated groan, standing up. He started pacing, muttering to himself. "Okay, worst case scenario, they come back asking questions, right?" "Right. Then we stick to the story." He looked at me sharply. "You don't crack. You can't crack." My blood boiled. "Are you serious? That's your big plan? Just hope the cops don't figure it out." Jake sighed. "Look, man, this guy's old. His memory's probably fuzzy. He probably just saw a shadow or something. Or he saw you." Jake didn't respond. For the first time, I saw it, real fear in his eyes. And for once, I wasn't the one who was scared. He was. Good. I crossed my arms. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about you anymore. Your whole team is freaking out. If you go down, the season's over. If coach finds out you lied, you're done." Jake clenched his jaw. "So, what do you want me to do? Just turn myself in?" I stared at him. "Maybe." Jake let out a harsh laugh. "You right? And ruin my future? Forget it." I sighed. I knew he'd never do it willingly. Jake was too used to getting away with things, which meant if I wanted this to end, I was going to have to make him. One way or another. Jake was still pacing, rubbing his face like he could physically wipe away the problem. He wasn't used to being backed into a corner. Normally, he could charm, lie, or joke his way out of anything. Not this time. I crossed my arms, planting my feet firmly on the carpet. "You owe me, Jake." He scoffed. "For what?" I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "For saving your ass." Jake rolled his eyes. "Oh, please." I would have figured something out. I let out a humorless laugh. "Yeah? Like what?" "Telling the cops a different fake story." I shook my head. "No, I took the fall for you. Now, you're going to make it up to me." Jake's jaw tightened. "Or what?" I held his gaze, letting the silence stretch between us. "Then I play my trump card. Or maybe I accidentally let something slip to Dad," I said slowly. "Maybe I tell him I lied. Maybe the cops come back, and this time, I don't protect you." Jake's entire body tensed. I could see the war happening in his head. On one hand, he hated the idea of me having leverage over him. But on the other, he knew I wasn't bluffing. I watched as he clenched his fists, took a slow breath, and forced himself to relax. When he spoke, his voice was strained but controlled. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll make it up to you." I raised an eyebrow. "How?" "Whatever you need," he said. "Money for the repairs, covering for you with Mom and Dad, whatever." He exhaled sharply. "Just don't do anything stupid." I studied him, weighing my options. He had never agreed to anything this easily before. It almost felt too easy. Still, I wasn't about to let the opportunity slip through my fingers. "Good," I said, "because I'm not bailing you out again." Jake nodded, but there was something in his expression I didn't like, something calculating. For the first time, I wondered if I had really won. And I got my answer sooner than I expected, because just when I thought I had Jake under control, everything took a turn for the worse. For the next couple of days, things were weird. Jake actually kept his word, which was rare. He covered for me when Dad asked if I'd finish my chores, slipped me $20 when Mom wasn't looking, and even gave me the last slice of pizza at dinner. Something unheard of in our house. It was almost enough to make me think I had finally gotten the upper hand. Almost. Then Friday afternoon rolled around, and I got a visitor I really wasn't expecting. I was outside, kicking at a patch of dead grass while pretending to rake the yard, when I heard footsteps on the driveway. I turned, expecting Mom or Dad. Instead, I found myself face to face with Kevin Parker. My stomach dropped. Kevin wasn't a close friend, but we knew each other. He was one of Jake's teammates, a solid wide receiver with a cocky grin and an easygoing attitude. Usually, he didn't give me the time of day. So why was he here now? Kevin stopped a few feet away, hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets. He glanced around like he was making sure no one else was around. "Hey," he said. "Got a minute?" I hesitated. Sure?" Kevin sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, man, I wasn't going to say anything, but after practice today, I figured I should warn you." My skin prickled. "Warn me about what?" Kevin exhaled, shifting on his feet. "Somebody saw the crash." I felt my heart stop. My grip tightened around the rake. "What do you mean?" Kevin glanced toward the street, then back at me. "Some old guy who lives near that curve?" He told the cops he heard the wreck and looked outside just in time to see someone getting out of the car. My pulse hammered in my ears. Kevin lowered his voice. Said it was definitely a tall guy. He gave me a pointed look. "Now, no offense, but that doesn't really match you." My throat went dry. Did he say who he thought it was? Kevin shrugged. "Not yet. But if they come around asking more questions," he let the sentence hang, the implication clear. I swallowed hard. "Why are you telling me this?" Kevin let out a slow breath. "Because if this gets out, Jake's done." He wasn't wrong. If the cops figured out Jake had been driving, it wouldn't just mean trouble at home. It could mean real consequences. Maybe even charges. Kevin stepped closer, lowering his voice even more. "Coach was talking to some of the guys today. If Jake gets benched, we're screwed this season. And if he gets kicked off the team?" He shook his head. "We can kiss any chance at state goodbye." I stared at him, my chest tightening. Jake hadn't just roped me into this. He had the entire football team's future riding on this lie. Kevin clapped me on the shoulder. "Just handle it, all right?" Then he turned and walked off, leaving me standing in the yard, stomach in knots. I had taken the blame to protect Jake. But now I wasn't just protecting him. I was protecting the whole damn team. And I had no idea how to stop it. By the time Jake got home that evening, I was pacing the living room, my nerves shot. I had spent the past 2 hours replaying my conversation with Kevin over and over in my head. The fact that someone had seen the crash was bad enough. But the idea that the whole football team was now silently counting on me to keep my mouth shut, that was a whole new level of pressure. And I was done with it. Jake waltzed through the front door, tossing his duffel bag onto the floor like he didn't have a care in the world. He was still sweaty from practice, but he had that usual lazy confidence, like nothing in life could ever touch him. "Man, practice was brutal today," he groaned, stretching. "Coach had us running drills for hours." I barely let him take 2 steps before I grabbed his arm and yanked him toward the stairs. "We need to talk. Now." Jake groaned. "Dude, can it wait? I'm starving." "No," I snapped, dragging him into my room and shutting the door behind us. Jake frowned, finally realizing I wasn't joking. "All right, what's your deal?" I took a deep breath, then let it out slowly. "Kevin Parker came by today." That got his attention. "Kevin?" His brows furrowed. "Why?" I folded my arms. "Because someone saw you." Jake went completely still. I nodded. "Some old guy near the crash saw you getting out of the car. He told the cops it was a tall guy. They don't know it was you yet, but if they come back asking more questions." Jake cursed under his breath, running a hand through his hair. "Damn it." He started pacing. All right. We can fix this." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, we can fix this?" I already fixed it by taking the blame. But if the cops figure out you were driving, that's it. You're screwed. No football. No scholarship. Maybe even actual charges for reckless driving. Jake let out a frustrated groan and kept pacing. He was muttering to himself, thinking, planning. This was what he did best, scheming his way out of things. Finally, he stopped and turned to me. Okay, worst case, the cops come back asking questions, right? Right. Then we stick to the story. The old guy's memory is probably fuzzy. It was dark, and he only caught a glimpse. As long as you don't crack, we'll be fine. I clenched my fists. And what if they check traffic cameras? Or find someone else who saw you? Jake didn't answer right away. He just stared at me, his jaw tight. For the first time, I saw it, real fear in his eyes. And for once, I wasn't the one who was scared. He was. Good. I shook my head. You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about you anymore. Your whole team is freaking out. If you go down, the season's over. If coach finds out you lied, you're done. Jake swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. So what do you want me to do? He muttered. Just turn myself in? I stared at him. Maybe. Jake let out a harsh laugh. Yeah, right? And ruin my future? Forget it. I sighed. I knew he'd never do it willingly. Jake was too used to getting away with things, which meant if I wanted this to end, I was going to have to make him. One way or another. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain ran through worst-case scenarios. The cops knocking on our door, Dad finding out the truth, Jake getting arrested. And worst of all, the sinking feeling that I'd let him get away with too much for too long. By morning, I knew what I had to do. Jake strolled into the kitchen like it was just another normal Saturday. He yawned, stretching, completely unaware that his life was about to implode. I was already sitting at the table, hands curled around a mug of coffee I hadn't touched. My stomach was in knots, but my mind was made up. Mom was flipping through a magazine, sipping her own coffee, while Dad was reading the paper, his jaw still tight with lingering frustration from the crash. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. Then I set the mug down and said, I need to tell you guys something. Dad glanced up. What is it? Jake, who had just opened the fridge, froze. He turned his head slightly, watching me from the corner of his eye. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. But I didn't stop. I lied. I said, my voice clear. Mom frowned. About what? I swallowed hard. My palms were sweaty, but I forced myself to meet Dad's gaze. About the car. I took another breath, then finally said it. I wasn't driving. The room went dead silent. Dad's newspaper crinkled as he set it down, his eyes narrowing. Excuse me? Jake dropped the carton of orange juice he had just grabbed. It hit the floor with a dull thunk, spilling across the tiles, but nobody moved. I pressed forward, my voice stronger now. Jake was driving. He crashed the car. He came home and told me to take the blame so he wouldn't get in trouble. Mom gasped, covering her mouth. Jake! Dad turned slowly to face him, and for the first time in my life, I saw actual fear in Jake's eyes. Tell me he's lying, Dad said, his voice dangerously calm. Jake hesitated. I could see the gears turning in his head, the calculations, the desperate attempt to come up with a way out of this. But for once, there wasn't one. Finally, he let out a defeated sigh and dropped into a chair. Yeah, he muttered. It's true. Mom's shoulders sagged in disbelief. Jake, how could you? Dad, on the other hand, looked absolutely livid. He jabbed a finger at him. You sat there and let your brother take the fall for you? You let him get grounded, let him take the blame, all while you walked around like nothing happened? Jake lowered his head, saying nothing. Dad's nostrils flared. Get your ass in the car. Jake's head snapped up. Wait, what? We're going to the station, Dad said. You're telling the cops the truth. Jake's face drained of color. Dad, come on. No, you come on, Dad snapped. You think you can just lie your way out of this? That you can manipulate your brother into covering for you? That stops now. Jake turned to Mom, desperate. Mom! But she shook her head, her disappointment obvious. Go, she said quietly. And just like that, Jake's luck ran out. I watched as he got up, shoulders slumped, and followed Dad out the door. The sound of the car engine starting sent a strange wave of relief through me. I didn't know exactly what would happen next, whether Jake would get a ticket, lose his license, or worse. But for once, it wasn't my problem. I had finally done the right thing, and damn, it felt good.